Now, our second story for the evening as well, a major story from the Red Coast Supercars Championship that broke during Sunday night's episode of Grid Live Wrap-Up. The 2023 Supercars champion, Brodie Kostecki, will return to racing with Erebus Motorsport. And now this is a shocking twist to a story with many turns, as it seems that the two sides were destined for a divorce. They're back together again now and getting ready for the next race weekend in New Zealand. In order to prepare for his supercar return, Kostecki participated in a test day at Winton. Now, Kostecki said he needed some time away to prioritise his health, but he is looking forward to being back behind the wheel again. After missing 2 race weekends and 6 races, Kostecki won't be able to defend his championship, but he'll still be able to give Erebus an indication of where their 2024 program is at. Now, Todd Hazelwood and Jack LeBrock are 9th and 12th in the points respectively. In the team standings, Erebus currently sits in 5th behind Triple Eight, Grove, Team 18 and Matt Stern Racing. Now, last year, Kostecki and then teammate Will Brown had one of the best cars in the field, winning the team's championship. After all the turmoil happening over the off-season, Erebus hasn't fired off in 2024 and on a strong note, and seems to have taken a step back in speed. The photo courtesy there of Supercars. Kirby, starting with you on this one. How unexpected is this reunion between Kostecki and Erebus? Also, do you expect Brodie to be competitive and fight for wins as soon as he gets back?
Yeah, Josh, like you were saying, this news broke in the middle of our Grid Live wrap-up show on Sunday night when we were recapping the weekend's races, and this was something that was, very, very shocking. Didn't expect it at all, because it really seemed like, it was inevitable that Erebus and Kostecki were going to split up, and then all of a sudden, Brodie is back. I'm like, are you serious? And then I had to check the date and see April Fool's Day has already passed, and here we are. Brodie's going to be back for Erebus. I saw some content from Winton yesterday of him getting behind the wheel of the car, trying to get back in the swing of things, knock off the off-season rust and all of that. Here we have Brodie seems to be locked in, and he's ready to go when Supercars go to Taupo for the next round in New Zealand. So yeah, I did not expect to see these two parties working together again. Not really sure what exactly happened behind the scenes, but it really seems like there's more to the story than this, especially considering, all the different elements to the story that we've covered on the Grid Tonight show in recent months, including that interview with Barry Ryan and Betty Clemenco that Supercars did, where it was basically a pointless interview because all they could say, that we can't really talk about this. We're just going to respect Brodie's privacy. And it really seemed like that they were just done with each other. And here we are. They're going to be racing together again. So I don't really know what to make of this situation, but I have a feeling that this story is still far from over, and we're probably going to continue to cover this story in the weeks and months ahead on Grid Tonight. And the second question you asked, I think it's going to be interesting to see how Brodie's going to be able to do. And like I've said in previous shows, no disrespect to Todd Hazelwood, who did a good job filling in for Brodie and Jack LeBrock, but they're not a Brodie Kostecki. Brodie Kostecki is, a top 5 driver, top 3 driver in the Repco Supercars Championship, and he can definitely get the most out of his equipment. So far, Hazelwood and LeBrock, it really seemed like Erebus is down on speed compared to last year, but I say, put a Brodie Kostecki behind the wheel of that car and wait a while, set a few races and see where the speed is at. And if Brodie's not doing much better than what Hazelwood and LeBrock have been able to do, then we can say, yeah, Erebus have taken a step back over the offseason. But if Brodie comes in and he's, fighting for wins and at the top of the timesheets, then you can say, that Brodie is the real deal, and he may be able to turn around a season for Erebus that hasn't exactly got off on the right foot.
One of the biggest messes in the history of the V8 Supercars or Supercars Championship. What an absolute mess this story has been from the very beginning. So it breaks that Kostecki won't be, starting the season, which we obviously now know. As Josh mentioned, he's not been at the first 2 rounds at Bathurst and at the Grand Prix, able to defend his championship because of missing those races. He starts at New Zealand next week on 0 points. He's not going to be able to defend his championship. He'll go out and win races, potentially gets on some podiums, bring that team back up to the level that they were at last year. But there is so much more to this story that we may never hear about or will do down the road. There was the health thing to start off with. Then we were told it wasn't a health thing. Then it was a mental health thing. And we was told it wasn't a mental health thing. Then recently it's been a health thing again. On Friday of last week, there was no news. Nothing was happening. Suddenly by Monday morning, Australian time, boom, he's back. We've made up and we've had a cuddle. And to the analogy of the divorce between the two, it looks like they're just going to have to stick together for the kids' sake and get through the end of Brodie's contract at the end of the season. He does not want to be there. The team potentially don't want him there. There's more to this story, which we'll get to in the second part of this segment in a moment. But it is an absolute mess. And it was good to see him back at Winton yesterday, having a run in the car. Of course, if you think back to Adelaide last year, he won the championship. They had Shaw and Partners on the car, Coca-Cola on the car, gone. For a health thing? Really? They've lost their managing director, Erebus have. She left, Shannon, and she's gone to work for Coca-Cola. That was also announced this week, Coca-Cola Australia. So there is a lot of stuff that has happened and we'll never, ever hear about that behind the scenes. First of all, it is great for the champion to be back. They need this, Supercars. We talked about it before as part of the story. McLaughlin, gone. Whincup, retired. Van Gisbergen, gone. Cam Waters, maybe looking at the exit door. More on him later. They need the big personalities. They need the fan favourite drivers there. At Adelaide, Brodie won the championship. His car from last year is now kept as the Erebus centrepiece, or it will be at some stage. Will Brown's car from that race was written off. So 2 new chassis for the team over the off-season. They got them ready for the start of the year. It hasn't been, as you mentioned, a particularly brilliant start. Todd Hazelwood was rushed in he was supposed to be doing co-driving duties for the team when we get to Sandown and Bathurst later on in the year, and he's had to end up doing the first 2 rounds of the season. And I'm pretty certain I mentioned it on the show a few weeks back. If Hazelwood does more than 2 rounds, then he can't co-drive. So if he'd been in the car in New Zealand next weekend, then that would have been it for Kostecki. He would have been out for the rest of the season. Hazelwood would have ended up then doing the rest of the season, or at least he wouldn't have been able to co-drive. So this has suddenly come through now that Brodie's back and Todd ends up being back on the sidelines again. They had, as far as I'm aware, Jaden Ojeda in the wings as a potential 5th driver for a co-driving duty later on in the year. What's going to happen to him now? Because he won't be co-driving at Erebus, because it will, to be confirmed, it's probably going to be Jack LeBrock, who is the full season driver, will end up with Hazelwood. And Brodie will end up with his regular partner, David Russell, who have been very strong together as a partnership over the last couple of years and won at Sandown last year. So, as I said, there's a lot of this stuff that is not being talked about, or certainly being talked about in hushed tones and not being publicized by any media. From what I'm hearing, lots of people know a lot more than they're allowed to let on. So end of the season, perhaps, when Brodie does end up leaving, we'll get some more juicy nuggets of this. I don't think we'll get much over the weekend in New Zealand, which we should be celebrating the fact that Supercars are back in New Zealand next weekend, and it's a sellout at a brand new circuit. But all of the focus is going to be on the number 1 garage, the Erebus Motorsport. And of course, Supercars will do what they did at Bathurst. They'll have Jess Yates go and talk to Brodie on the TV broadcast, and it's going to be interesting to see what he does or does not have to say about the whole situation going forward. But the main part of it is the champion is back, and he's going to be a fly in the ointment potentially of the 2 Red Bull cars that are going to be fighting out for the championship for the rest of the year.
According to Adderton, he received a phone call from Kostecki who told him that he was returning to Erebus, and one of the conditions from the team owner, which was, as you said, Betty Kimeko as well, was to remove all Boost Mobile Australia branding from his helmet. Interesting. Now, apparently, Kostecki followed through and he was allowed to return to the team. Adderton added that he was disappointed and sad due to all the support Boost Mobile has given Kostecki over the years. Now, as a result, Adderton has decided to withdraw his Boost Mobile and Mobile X brands from motorsports as soon as possible, confirming this to motorsport.com. Interesting enough, Mobile X sponsored Kostecki's NASCAR Cup Series debut last year at Indianapolis with Richard Childress Racing. Now, Erebus and RCR had formed a partnership, as team owner Richard Childress has expressed lots of interest in putting Kostecki in more NASCAR races. Now, given the drama, loss of sponsorship, there's no telling where this story will go next. So, Matt, having you on this one, what are your thoughts on these accusations made by Adderton? And could Kostecki losing Mobile X mean the end of his NASCAR ambitions with RCR?
Yes, if you remember back to last year, Brodie did the Indianapolis road course race with the Mobile X branding in a third RCR car that weekend and had a pretty strong run. Finished top 15 from memory. Then if you fast forward from there to the Adelaide 500 at the end of the year where he won the Supercars Championship, Richard Childress was in attendance, excuse me, as a guest of Erebus and got to see Brodie win the championship. The week after that, Brodie was supposed to be at the aforementioned Circuit of the Americas to do some kind of, I don't know what it entirely was, but some kind of endurance race with Richard Childress Racing NASCAR drivers, Austin Dillon and Kyle Busch. Brodie had an appendix operation after the Clipsal 500, and Will Brown had to go and fill in for Brodie that weekend. And then when the story broke initially about all of this, Brodie's leaving and he's out of a seat, etc., in end of January, when this started, a lot of people were pointing the fact that maybe Brodie is trying to get out and go to NASCAR and follow Van Gisbergen and do more in the American side of things. But now that looks like it may be hitting a bit of a stopping block if that is what he's going to do. Peter Adderton is the owner of Mobile X and Boost Mobile, who used to sponsor a team. They've been a personal backer of Brodie Kostecki for a very, very long time, basically his whole Supercars career, as well as sponsoring various other drivers and teams. They also sponsor the Gold Coast 500, and they also now, as of the start of the season, took over sponsoring the Pole Position Award for qualifying. Everyone gets $1,000, or certainly was for my sponsor actually, but sponsored the pole for the last few races. That's been conflicting because other people have got telecommunications personal sponsors as well. So that's a whole other story. And now Adderton has decided to pull the plug, it sounds like, on all motorsport activities going forward. And basically, he said on a post on Facebook, the quicker we can get out, the better. So we might not have a sponsor for the Gold Coast 500 in October. We may not have anyone giving out the check for qualifying pole positions for the rest of the season. You say what you want about Peter Adderton. He's put a lot of money into motorsport in that part of the world, but he is a foghorn. And he likes Facebook and he likes to rant on it about various things. Personally, from mine, thanks, Peter. Great stuff. Ciao. But he'll come back. He will. In 5 or 6 years, he'll be back in some shape or form, if not before. But it looks like this may have been something of the hold up for getting Brodie back in the car beforehand. We don't know. From my previous answer to the previous question, Josh T says, I honestly thought Brodie was going to go down the NASCAR route. I agree. I thought it was going to be something that he may dovetail, certainly, for a little while, and then maybe go full time in a couple of years, maybe after winning another championship or a Bathurst 1000. But that may or may not happen now. Depends what the Childress Erebus link up continues to be, and if he still does want to come over and do some more cup races, if they can get other sponsors behind him, because if that can be worked out, then it will continue. But yeah, the end potentially of Boost Mobile, at least I think for now, going forward. But it's going to be interesting to see, again, as I said about Brodie, what more, and we talked about MotoGP and Liberty last week. Once we get to the next round and people are back in the paddock, it's going to be interesting to see what comments come from people about this story we're going to have a busy show that week because the next couple of weeks on Grid Tonight are going to be full of quotes from people potentially, because we've got Kota MotoGP this weekend. So keep your eyes and ears out for what's going to be coming out of paddocks over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, Boost Mobile on the way out of Supercars, it seems.